Hi, my name is Michael Buckoff and I am from OnlineTOEFLCourse.com. Number one, what are the TOEFL speaking percentages for someone who scores 26 out of 30 points? Number two, why do I need to make my TOEFL speaking more natural? Number three, how do I make my speaking more natural? These are the three things I will be talking about in this video. So what are the TOEFL speaking percentages for someone who scores 26 out of 30 points? Okay, so there's some data that ETS has on test takers from January 2017 to December 2017. So these are what we call thousands of test takers took the test, and they're looking at the averages of how people did, right? So if you look under the scale score for 26, right? So if you get 26 on reading, that's going to put you in the 71 percentile. If you get 26 on listening, that's a 74 percentile, so a little bit higher. Now 26 in the speaking, that's going to put you at the 87 percentile. Now if you get 26 on writing, that's 85%. And then if your total score is 104, that's going to put you at 86%. So let's go back to the speaking. So what does this mean? When I say 87 percentile, it means 13% of all test takers reached this score. 87% of all test takers did not reach this score. So this is a pretty difficult score to achieve. That's probably why you've probably seen at YouTube and many other places, people are always asking for advice on how to score 26 in the speaking, because only 12 to 13% of all test takers have ever done that. Secondly, why do I need to make my TOEFL speaking more natural? This is important. Now, obviously, the most important thing here is if you can speak naturally, it will be easier for other people to understand you. So if you need English for either personal, academic, or professional situations, speaking more naturally will be much better in your interpersonal relationships. In addition to being able to speak clearly and speak naturally to the people with whom you come into contact, I mean, obviously, according to the independent speaking and integrated speaking rubrics, speaking naturally is also going to help you get a higher TOEFL score, right? So let's take a look at a general description here for 4. So maybe you may not get a 4, but at least if you know what the standard is, you can at least shoot to that goal. So it says here, under general description, the response fulfills the demands of the task with at most minor lapses in completeness. It is highly intelligible and exhibits sustained, coherent discourse. A response at this level is characterized by all of the following. So this is the one thing you want to take out of this, right? Highly intelligible means it's very easy for other people to understand what you're saying, right? So if you go to the grocery store and you go over to a clerk and say, hey, where's the conditioner? And they're going to look at you, they're going to say, what? You say, where's the conditioner? Now you're pronouncing all the words in there, but you're not saying conditioner. If you say conditioner, you're very, very highly intelligible. If you say conditioner, you're not very intelligible, and other people are not going to understand what you're saying. So being highly intelligible is very important. Let's keep going. It says generally well-paced flow, fluid expression, speech is clear. We get this again, clear and highly intelligible is the same thing. It says it may include minor lapses or minor difficulties with pronunciation. It says, or intonation patterns which do not affect overall intelligibility. So based on this description here, if you can speak naturally, you will be more intelligible and you will perform better in this delivery category. Similarly, if you look at the integrated speaking rubrics, it's very similar here. It says your speech is highly intelligible and exhibits sustained, coherent discourse, right? How about this? Speech is generally clear, fluid, and sustained. It may include minor lapses or minor difficulties with pronunciation or intonation. Pace may vary at times as the speaker attempts to recall information overall intelligibility remains high. So again, with the integrated speaking, you can actually have some minor pacing issues as you're explaining the information from the reading and the listening passage, but not too many. And you want to make sure you're speaking clearly. So I think in order to score high on TOEFL speaking, in order to get that 26 out of 30, to be in the top 10 to 12% of all test takers, one important thing is to improve that delivery. Now that you've learned that it's difficult percentage-wise to get the 26, and you've learned a little bit about the TOEFL speaking rubrics about why it's important to speak more naturally, now I'm going to talk about number 3. So how exactly do I make my TOEFL speaking more natural? What can I do specifically, right? Okay, for the sake of this video, I want to look at a speaking prompt here. So here is the prompt. If you had to choose among the following 3 jobs, which job would you choose? Teacher, airline pilot, or doctor? Now, I'm going to go ahead and read this. This takes about 45 seconds to deliver this response. And when I'm done, I'm going to talk about 3 important things that you need to be able to do when you're doing TOEFL speaking in order to speak more naturally. I will show you 3 things that I did that you can do in order to improve your intelligibility to speak more clearly. That way you can score much higher on the TOEFL IBT integrated and independent speaking rubrics. Okay, here we go. If I had to choose among the 3 professions, I would choose becoming a doctor because of the service I can give to others and the high pay. First of all, doctors provide a valuable service to others. For example, last year my father had 4 skin cancers on his face. His doctor removed the deadly cancers and reconstructed his face. Now, because of the doctor's valuable service, my father's life has been extended. Second of all, doctors are well paid. In fact, most doctors have an average pay of almost $200,000 annually. Therefore, if I worked in this profession, I would be able to have a high standard of living to support myself and my family. Therefore, among these 3 professions, I would definitely choose becoming a doctor. The first thing you want to do to speak naturally is to have good sentence rhythm. Every language has some kind of a rhythm to the language, and not all languages have the same rhythm, and that's the key. Most likely, your first language has a different sentence rhythm than English. Now, sentence rhythm in English is very simple. It's the combination of stress and unstressed words in the English language and making sure that when you're speaking, you're putting more stress on what we call content words. These are nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and verbs. And then you want to put less stress on function words. These are examples are auxiliary verbs, determiners, and prepositions. Now, to understand sentence rhythm, I want you to look at this paragraph. So I have, in smaller font, I have highlighted what I call function words, the grammatical words. And the words which are larger and bolded, these are what we call the content words. Notice if I read the function words, if I said if, to, among these, would, a, because of the, can, to, and the, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So function words are not really that important to the meaning. They're important to the grammar of the sentence, don't get me wrong. And you want to make sure you're pronouncing these things. Now notice when I read the content words, I had, choose, 3 professions, I choose becoming doctor, service, I give others high pay. So you have more or less a pretty good idea what I'm talking about when I'm reading out loud these content words. This is where you need to put your emphasis. Okay, so let's read this paragraph 2 ways. The first way, I'm going to read it by putting almost equal stress on all the words in the sentence. The second time, I will try to use good sentence rhythm and put more stress in the content words and less stress in the function words. Okay, here it is with no sentence rhythm. If I had to choose among these three professions, I would choose becoming a doctor because of the service I can give to others and the high pay. So you notice how I read that? I was kind of putting emphasis on almost every single word in the sentence, but that's not how we speak in English, right? So here's a rereading of this paragraph using sentence rhythm. If I had to choose among these three professions, I would choose becoming a doctor because of the service I can give to others and the high pay. So there you go. This is your first step. In order to speak more naturally, you need to have good sentence rhythm. The second important thing in TOEFL speaking to help you speak more naturally is you want to vary your intonation. The good news is if you understand sentence rhythm and you're putting more stress on those content words and less stress on the function words, that's already helping you with your intonation. Intonation is pretty complicated. The main thing you want to remember here is that you vary your tone. You're not just using one tone throughout the whole response. Typically, when you get to the end of a sentence, your tone should fall a little bit. And then as you're talking about the most important ideas within a sentence, we call these thought groups, you'll probably have a slightly higher tone at the end of each thought group, and then your tone falls when you get to the end. Okay, let's take a look at this paragraph one more time, this sentence one more time. Now, here's part of the problem. Intonation, when you're recording your voice into a microphone, it's very tough. Even native speakers have trouble varying their tone. You don't see anybody on the other end. So here's your tip. When you're recording your voice, when you're doing the TOEFL exam and you're doing that recording, pretend you're talking to somebody, right? If you're talking to somebody in English and you saw them, you're not going to say, "Hi, how are you? It is very nice to meet you." Am I right? You're going to say, "Hi, how are you? Hey, it's nice to meet you. What's your name?" So if you're talking to somebody directly, you would try to vary the tone more because that shows you have interest in what they're saying, and it's a way of sending positive body language to the other speaker. So kind of pretend that you're talking directly to somebody face to face instead of just recording. So try to imagine somebody as you're recording your speaking task, and that might help you with your tone. The main thing you remember here is you need to vary your intonation. Now, obviously, when you look at this sentence, because it has a period, you know that when you get to the end of the sentence, your tone needs to fall. But then, what do we do after all of these, what we call parts of the sentence? So let me read this with no intonation. I'm going to speak in a monotone. Then secondly, I'm going to read it varying my intonation. Let's see if we can figure out the difference. If I had to choose among these three professions, I would choose becoming a doctor because of the service I can give to others and the high pay. So how did that sound? Notice, I'm not speaking very loudly. That's a big mistake a lot of students make. They're not speaking loud enough. So if you're not speaking very loudly, you're not going to vary your tone as much as if you're speaking louder. So that's another tip. In addition to imagining somebody who you're talking to, make sure the volume of your voice is good. So here's the second one. If I had to choose among these three professions, I would choose becoming a doctor because of the service I can give to others and the high pay. You notice in this case, when you get to the end here, basically this is a thought group, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can divide up the sentences that you say, and when you're practicing for TOEFL, you can divide up your ideas into 4 or 5 stress words. Notice I did not count. Hold on here, sorry. Notice here I did not count all. I didn't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I only see 5 words here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 stress words. I go to the next one. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would choose becoming a doctor because of the service I can give to others. And I pause right before and then the high pay. So that's your next tip. In order to vary your tone, you want to make sure at the end of each of these thought groups, your tone is slightly inflected. When you get to the last word in the sentence, your tone needs to drop. The last important thing that you want to understand in order to speak more naturally and to get closer to that target score of 26 on the speaking, which only 12% of all test takers ever achieve, you need to understand thought groups and blending. We've talked about sentence rhythm. We've talked about intonation. Let's talk about thought groups and blending right now. Now, first of all, the first thing, what is a thought group? A thought group consists of 4 to 5 stressed words in a sentence with a pause, another 4 or 5 stressed words, and then a pause, and so on. Now, there's also logical pauses. For example, therefore, sometimes if we have transition words or we have a prepositional phrase in the beginning of the sentence before the main part of the sentence, that's a logical break or a pause in the sentence. And this is what's called pacing. You want to make sure your pacing is natural and it's not too many hesitations, but not too few hesitations. You need to reach the balance. That's what I'm teaching you right now, is 4 or 5 stressed syllables consists of a thought group. Remember that those stressed syllables are stressed words. These are nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and verbs. Now, the next thing, which is connected to this, is called blending. Once you've identified thought groups, you can sometimes blend the words within each thought group, and that really helps you to speak more naturally. If we take a look at this paragraph one last time, and we take a look at it in terms of thought groups and blending, here's what we got to do. So we look at the if clause here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stress words. So this is a logical place that you can pause. So I'm going to put a pause right there. Then you have I choose becoming doctor. Again, this makes sense here to pause right before the prepositional phrase. And then you say, because of the service I can give to others. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So this makes sense to have a pause here. And then we have our final pause at the end of the sentence. Right? So if I'm reading this, I'm making sure I'm not if I had to choose among these 3 professions. I'm saying if I had to choose among these 3 professions, pause, I would choose becoming a doctor, pause, because of the service I can give to others and the high pay. So that's probably how I would do that. So that's what we call thought groups. That's what you want to practice. You want to practice dividing up your sentences into these meaningful thought groups. And remember, at the end of each thought group, your tone is slightly higher until you get to the last thought group, and your tone here should fall. Now, what is blending? Blending means is you take the ideas or the words within each thought group and you kind of blend them together to make it more natural. Now remember, you do not blend one word from one thought group to another word of another thought group. You definitely don't do that. But instead of saying, if I had to choose among these 3 professions, I'm going to say, if I had to choose among these 3 professions, I would choose becoming a doctor because of the service I can give to others and the high pay. So notice that's the last step, is I take the thought group and I try to blend the words within the thought group. And that definitely helps you to speak more naturally. So what did you learn by watching this video? Number 1, you learned that scoring 26 out of 30 on the TOEFL speaking section puts you into the 87th percentile. That means only about 12 to 13% of all test takers ever reach that score. Now, you also learned that it's important to make your speaking more natural, first of all, so you can communicate more clearly in your personal, academic, and professional situations. In addition, it's important to make your speaking more natural so you score higher on the TOEFL IBT, especially since the delivery is one of the categories that the IBT human raters use in the rubrics to grade your speaking. Number 3, you also learned how to make your speaking more natural. You learn about sentence rhythm, intonation, and thought groups and blending. 3 important things that you can do in order to speak more naturally. There you go. Now, have you ever heard of this? Hearing is good, seeing is better, but doing is best? What am I talking about? You've just watched this video, so you've gotten some good instruction on how to make your pronunciation more natural. But you need to practice this. Just because you watch a video means nothing. You can go to Magoosh and watch a video. You can go to Noteful and watch a video. You can take the online ETS course and watch a video. However, if you join my online TOEFL course, guess what? You can send me speaking practice every day, right? And every single day you send me speaking practice, I will evaluate your speaking practice test in terms of delivery, language use, and topic development. And because I have more than 700 lessons, vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, reading, listening, speaking, and writing, I have more than 700 lessons to help you. Not only am I going to error correct your speaking that you send me, I will recommend specific lessons to help you improve so you can reach 26 on the speaking section of the test, right? I've had many of my students who have succeeded. So for more information, you can go to onlinetoeflcourse.com. I promise you, my course is about the same price as Magoosh, but I allow feedback. I give you speaking feedback, pronunciation feedback, and writing feedback if you join my course, and you can do it every 24 hours. And Magoosh will never allow you to do that.